From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The 16th summit of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, also known as ALBA, is being held in Havana, Cuba. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro was among regional leaders who attended the summit, which celebrates the 14th anniversary of its foundation. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel kicked off the event by delivering a speech that stressed the importance of ALBA for regional integration.
We have a fundamental duty to not allow them to take our natural resources and throw it under their hegemony with this aggression. They try to attack our values. They don't like our solidarity. They don't tolerate social justice and the equality for the distribution of income. They hate the degree of support the people of our region give to each other. And they don't agree with our right to choose whatever political system we want to have. They attack sustainable development and its coexistence with the environment. They hate and attack the vision of Caribbean and Latin American unity. They attack us with a single motive, to take over the resources of our region, that for a long time they have considered as their backyard.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro also spoke about the importance of unity in the development of the countries of the region.
Undoubtedly, no one by themselves, no one will be able to achieve a superior state of development if they are by themselves. Never. We don't want to understand this, I think, because the economic thought of our countries brings out isolation, self-isolation in within. The economic thought of our countries needs to evolve towards a vision about Latin America and the Caribbean, a vision of union.
Caribbean leaders also had their say at the ALBA summit in Havana. The Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines called for the strengthening of trade and economic ties among member countries. Dr. Ralph Gonsalves urged member countries to pool their resources to strengthen prosperity in the region by helping boost the most vulnerable economies. He also pledged solidarity with Cuba and other countries of the hemisphere that are facing sanctions and interventions. And Dominican Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit has expressed his full support for Venezuela, which he says continues to push ahead even in the face of sanctions and threats. Skerrit also congratulated Nicolás Maduro as he prepares to take his second mandate as president in January. Skerrit pledged his comment to the integration movement while commending ALBA for ensuring the marginalized countries have a rightful place at the table.
We are here.
And Bolivian President Evo Morales spoke about the challenges faced by progressive governments which are up against interventionist attempts.
But we cannot be divided, because I feel that before, only Cuba, almost for 50 years, faced those policies of domination, of intervention. Now there are new ways of interventionism of the empire of the states. They will try to stop us. They will try to put some countries away, but there are social movements for us. Peoples clearly organized based on sovereignty, economic, political sovereignty.
Students from Colombia have reached an agreement with the government of Iván Duque to add just under $1.5 million to save public education. The agreement follows 73 days of a national university strike. The agreement was reached after several days of talks with the National Executive for Investment in the Educational Sector. And on Thursday, the students held large demonstrations in defense of public education, but they were met with heavy police repression. More in this report.
Amidst a performance by drama students from the National University, students and teachers held a symbolic act in which they knitted together a country that they say should guarantee the rights of its population while also rejecting the economic policies of the government of Ivan Duque.
Universities are falling apart. They have infrastructure issues. There's a lack of professors. They are bound by a system that hires them for a predetermined period of time, defined by the length of the semesters, which last 4.5 months. 70% of professors in public institutions remain near the poverty line.
Students and teachers marched to reject the murder of social leaders and the ongoing threats students' leaders receive.
Today, we took to the streets once again to fight for our education and for our rights, and also to remember the murdered leaders. These are systematic assassinations, unlike what the government has been saying.
Once again, they have condemned the lack of political will by Ivan Duque to guarantee safe and proper access to education. Protesters say that this cabinet will only offer $1 billion Colombian pesos to the education sector, down from the 3.4 billion needed.
We are telling the government that students won't abandon their people, that we will fight for higher education and public education in general, and that they must give us the required budget.
If a country like Colombia, with its long history of suffering, intimidation and murders, if Colombia doesn't receive the help it needs from its government, its leaders, its ambassadors and its ministers, Colombia will easily become a pit of drug trafficking violence.
Student unions have announced a public session to condemn human rights violations and to reject repression from the government. Also, they confirmed the continuation of this national strike in defense of public education.
Judiciary workers have entered the second day of their strike, demanding the Argentine government fulfill its promise to increase their salaries. Our correspondent Sabrina Roth from Buenos Aires has more on this story.
Today is the second day of the 48-hour strike by workers of the judiciary. They demand that the government fulfill the agreement for a salary increase. The strike also demands the respect for the separation of powers between the executive and judicial powers. They are also rejecting the handing over of extra powers to the government of Buenos Aires, which could lead to judges being removed or the duties modified. Union leaders want the judiciary to remain independent and that if they don't receive a reply to their demands, they plan to hold another 48-hour strike on December 27th and 28th, paralyzing the judicial system across the country.
A 7-year-old Guatemalan girl has died hours after being taken into custody by U.S. Border Patrol officers. She's believed to have died of dehydration and shock. Officials from Guatemalan Foreign Ministry have identified the girl as Jacqueline Cal. The girl crossed the border into the U.S. last week along with her father before being detained. And in yet another shocking incident, a family with a 2-year-old child was detained at the U.S.-Mexico border near the city of Tijuana.
Nuestras vidas peligran en Honduras.
Our lives are in danger in Honduras because of problems between family members. Our lives are at risk, and that is why we decided to flee, to risk crossing to the other side. This is being done for my daughter. She's only 2. She has her whole life ahead of her. She shouldn't be orphaned without a mother or father.
Solo tiene 2 años, tiene toda una vida por delante.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. Venezuela Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has met with Chile's largest indigenous community. He tweeted, "It is an honor to have met with the Peñis leaders and leaders of Mapuche people of Chile who visited us. All of our solidarity with your causes and struggles, our respect and commitment always." The Venezuelan authorities have awarded official refugee status to over 120 citizens from various countries. The status was granted to the people from Syria, the Western Sahara, and Colombia.
These people traveled hundreds of kilometers to reach Venezuela. From Colombia, many left everything behind to start a new life, far away from the threats of paramilitaries. Accent says millions of Colombians have been forced to flee their country, where authorities turn a blind eye to human rights violations.
We were under surveillance. We were being followed, photographed. We received calls asking for personal information. When we saw how bad things were getting, we decided to come to Venezuela.
Gilberto says that this country breeds peace. He says that being a community leader led him to being kidnapped in 2002. He has called Venezuela his home for 17 years.
Venezuela has shown it will help people to move forward, with a willingness to change the world under socialist ideals. So they allow those of us who have lived through violence to have hope, to believe in a new world.
Many believe the peace process in Colombia has remained a dream rather than a reality. That is why these Colombians demand that Iván Duque's government work to protect them from violence.
We make a call on the Colombian authorities to actually implement the peace agreements. With no peace in Colombia, there can be no peace in the continent.
The Bolivarian government has extended a helping hand to guarantee the right to asylum for anyone who arrives in the country.
It's been 1 month since Mapuche leader Camilo Cartillanca was killed by police, and an indigenous student group plans to honor the memory of the slain indigenous men. The Mapuche student organization will host a demonstration to bring attention to the many social injustices the community still faces. Efforts are also underway to have special police forces withdrawn from the area. The Paraguay River has overflowed in the city of Asunción, affecting over 2,000 families. Many of them have been relocated.
Juana Núñez arrived in the Juquiti neighborhood nearly 20 years ago. She raised her 8 children here, but now her family has been affected by the Paraguay River, overflowing its banks, something that's been happening more and more frequently in recent years.
I live here. I have 8 children. Almost all of them are adults and live on their own. I live with my husband and one of my children. We got here 18 years ago, and during that time, we've had to evacuate 4 times.
Nearly the entire city of Asunción is surrounded by the Paraguay River. Close to 100,000 people live in neighborhoods close to the river's bank. When the water level rises, they all have to move to shelters, and they lose a part of what they own.
We no longer have anything, no nice things, nothing. That hurts the most, and we must put up with it. Now we are living on somebody else's land, and we have to pay to live there. If we don't, we will be evicted.
Families demand a definitive solution to these issues, and they want a levee built to protect their lives.
We want them to build a levee because nobody should be made to live like this. We are moving back and forth all the time.
The government and the municipality of Asunción are planning to build a coastal avenue on the bank of the Paraguay River, but the residents want to be involved in the planning.
A unique initiative in Costa Rica is letting people make money out of their waste. Under the program Ecolones, people can now trade their recyclable waste for virtual money to buy other products. They can also pay for other services like dental treatment and hotel accommodations. The idea is to encourage people to manage their waste carefully by reducing the damage done to the environment.
People come to our recycling center. We receive the material like plastic bottles and cans, and depending on the quantity they give us, we give them a certain amount of cryptocurrency. They can then use it on a platform that offers various services and products with an environmental value.
Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown has written to the Bank of New Scotia asking for a meeting by January 7 to discuss the purchase of branch holdings in the Caribbean island. Brown says he wishes to discuss the parameters of the sale, which will not necessarily exclude participation by regional entities approved by the government and regulatory authorities. He also has stressed the need to rebalance ownership of the local banking sector.
And work in harmony to make our world a better place.
Bermuda's government has launched one of the last legal bids to restore a ban on same-sex marriage. The government has filed an appeal to a high court in London seeking to uphold a law challenged in local courts that would ban gay marriage. Gay rights activists say the move is a cynical attack on the rights and freedoms of others. In February, Bermuda approved a law which allows same-sex couples to form domestic partnerships but doesn't allow marriage. Caribbean countries have called for a strong political and meaningful outcome at the COP24 summit. In a joint statement, CARICOM members say they hope international attention will be brought to the special circumstances of a small island's developing states. They point to the climate change impacts that the region has experienced in recent years, including devastating hurricanes, tropical storms, and other extreme weather events. People living on the high plateau in Bolivia, known as the Altiplano, have always been exposed to high levels of solar radiation. At this time of the year, it is even more intense, and with global warming, the effects on people's health appear to be getting worse.
It's summer on the Bolivian Altiplano, and at this time of the year, it's feeling hotter and hotter.
I believe this is due to global warming, or due to the contamination that exists. This is happening worldwide, not only here.
The truth is that in recent months, we feel it even more. But I guess one of the main factors is global warming. Basically, we are not protecting ourselves.
But at more than 35,000 meters above sea level, it's not only about the heat, but the ultraviolet rays, which in this region are the most intense in the world.
The rates of ultraviolet radiation are the highest in the world, and this is due to two things that we cannot change: our altitude and our latitude. Our closeness to the equator means that we receive large amounts of UV radiation practically all year long, but at this time of year, it's particularly high.
According to the Laboratory of Atmospheric Physics, on the Bolivian Altiplano during winter, solar radiation measures around 7 points, but now, during summer, it reaches 16 points.
This means that someone of medium complexion, neither very light nor very dark-skinned, like most of us in Bolivia, can suffer solar burns, known as erythema, in less than 10 minutes. That is for a person who is outdoors around noon, say between 10 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon.
Prevention is easy enough, but few people take the advice, which simply involves wearing clothes with long sleeves, a hat, sunglasses, and using sunscreen as recommended by doctors to avoid excessive exposure to the sun.
The skin begins to get damaged. This may heal and regenerate, but if the damage remains, the next sunburn will affect exactly where the previous one stopped, and this will cause premature aging, a loss of suppleness, the appearance of blemishes, and eventually skin cancer.
The high solar radiation on the Altiplano can damage not only the skin, but also the eyes, which may develop premature infections and cataracts.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has officially launched its new political party called the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party. NUMSA Secretary General Arvin Jim, who is serving as the party's leader, said they will be a home for the working class and will give the message and the masses an opportunity to drive their own agenda. He added that South African workers will defeat capitalism in the same manner they brought down the apartheid system. The opposition in the Democratic Republic of Congo has accused the government of being behind a fire that destroyed thousands of voting machines. They have claimed the fire was a scheme by the government to postpone elections after realizing they are going to be defeated by the opposition. Voters will be going to the polls on December 23 to elect a successor to the longtime ruler Joseph Kabila.
Yesterday's fire started in a place which is under high security. There is even a military camp nearby. How can one explain that in such a place a fire can start just like this? I really don't believe this is possible. There have been a lot of schemes around the organization of this election for quite some time now. I start to believe that actually there won't be any election on December 23.
British Prime Minister Theresa May is still hopeful she can renegotiate her Brexit deal with the European Union before it is tabled before Parliament. May has been in Brussels in a desperate bid to get a deal that will be acceptable to British MPs who have vowed to vote against the current deal. However, in a separate interview, European Council President Donald Tusk said the European Union won't renegotiate the deal.
The EU is clear, as I am, that if we are going to leave with the deal, this is it. But my discussions with colleagues today have shown that further clarification and discussion following the Council's conclusions is, in fact, possible. There is work still to do, and we will be holding talks in coming days about how to obtain the further assurances that the UK Parliament needs in order to be able to approve the deal.
The head of the United Nations AIDS Agency, Michel Sirive, has offered to step down in June 2019, months before his term expires. This comes after calls for Sirive to step down for allegedly fostering a work environment that has tolerated bullying, sexual harassment, and cultural of fear among staff. He is also accused of mishandling sexual assault allegations against former Deputy Executive Director Luis Loures. Israeli security forces have entered Ramallah in search of a suspect accused of killing 2 soldiers near an illegal Israeli settlement on Thursday. Early on, several Palestinian youths were injured after being attacked by advancing Israeli soldiers in Al-Beri city in the industrial zone of Ramallah city. 4 Palestinians, including a female minor, have been detained by the Israeli soldiers. For the third night, thousands of Hungarians have clashed with police in Budapest over the government's so-called slave law that allows employers to demand up to 400 hours overtime annually. Tensions rose when officers used pepper spray to disperse angry protesters in front of the parliament. Demonstrators have also strongly criticized the government of Viktor Orban for creating a new parallel court system. It will oversee political sensitive cases related to elections, corruption, and the right of asylum or protest. A gas explosion at a block of flats in Ukraine has left 1 person injured, but there are fears that several others may be trapped in the rubble. The explosion is believed to have The explosion is believed to have taken place on the 3rd floor of the 5-story building. Medical and emergency workers are on the scene searching through the rubble for survivors. Residents of nearby buildings have been evacuated. Miss Spain and Miss Panama are redefining what beauty represents in the 2018 Miss Universe contest to be held in Thailand. Angela Ponce is the first transgender contestant to take part in the competition. She says diversity is what makes society beautiful. In another first, Panama has the first indigenous woman ever to participate in the pageant. Miss Panama Rosa Yvette Montezuma is seen as a role model throughout Latin America as indigenous people continue to face discrimination in the region.
The responsibility that I feel is that I don't only represent Spanish women, but I represent a diversity of women. I represent a lot of diversity in the world. I represent those who can identify themselves with me, because who hasn't suffered of prejudice? Who hasn't had to deal with bullying? Who hasn't had to deal with some kind of discrimination in their lives?
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories you can find at our website at telesurtv.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.